Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
Before a joint session of Congress and a television audience estimated to be 30 million people, U.S. President Barack Obama delivered his 6th State of the Union address last night. And while the FT has already devoted considerable amount of ink to the topic, we thought it worthwhile to go back to the well one last time, this time with Alphaville's Cardiff Garcia.
Yeah, one more pass isn't going to hurt anybody.
So Cardiff, you and I spoke this morning and wanted to kind of just get your initial thoughts on the speech last night.
Yeah, look, get ready to hear the phrase middle-class economics a lot more. This was essentially Obama bringing inequality to the forefront. Okay, this is, I think, going to be the topic that dominates at least a big part of the political conversation for the next couple of years for both Republicans and Democrats. And in a sense, it's almost the inevitable outcome of just what's happened in the aftermath of the recession. The recovery has been notably sluggish, but it's been worst of all for middle-class families. Median incomes are still lower than they were back then. There still has been very weak wage growth even in the recent years, even after jobs growth has picked up. So I think it's interesting that Obama has essentially said, look, I have nothing to lose here. I'm a lame duck president. I'm going to make this a big part of the agenda for the next couple of years.
While it might be on the agenda, what do you think the reality of it actually going anywhere is in the immediate future?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's something about these speeches. It's totally predictable. It's understandable in many ways, but it's also a little bit sad that these aren't actually policy proposals that have a realistic chance of going anywhere. This is essentially a positioning platform. It lets you know where the president stands. Democrats and Republicans are going to have to, go back to their corners and figure out where they stand. But in terms of what Obama actually has proposed, there's very little chance. Part of the issue here is that, his actual proposals are meant to pay for themselves. So he wants more money for the middle class tax cuts, tax credits, but he wants to do it by closing loopholes and by raising taxes on rich people, something that's really been anathema to Republicans for a very long time. So I think there's very little chance that the main policy ideas that he presented yesterday are going to actually, end up as law. That being said, there's some other things like on trade, maybe on immigration, I don't know, that might have a better shot. But in terms of the middle class agenda, the thing he talked about the most, probably very little chance.
And at the same time, this was some kind of serious table setting for 2016.
Yeah. Yeah, well, when I said that it can still matter even if the specific policy ideas don't get enacted into law, what I meant was that at the very least, I think this sets a minimum baseline for the Democrats, whether it's Hillary Clinton or somebody else. All right, they're certainly not going to propose anything that's less ambitious for the middle class than what Obama talked about last night. They have to at least do as much as he proposed. But the thing is that the Republican Party, which is historically the party of tax cuts, is also going to have to at least address this.
And then finally, you and I are about the same age. We've watched Barack Obama go from senator to now president. Yeah. And I'm sure you were there or watching live at his famous 2004 speech. Yeah. Where does this speech rank in Obama's kind of political jiu-jitsu? So
there's one thing to say about that 2004 speech that he brought up, by the way. He spent a lot of last night's State of the Union speech. He spent more of it talking about raising up the middle class rather than the taxing on the rich part. Okay, in part because he wanted to go back to the 2004 Barack Obama and say that there is still a way that politics can work. There is still a way that the president can work with Congress. He is still the guy who wanted to unite people rather than divide them. And it's hard to say, well, that there aren't two Americas, as he said before, when essentially you've got a policy platform that concedes that there's a rich America and there's an everybody else America. So I think from a rhetorical perspective, that was probably a wise idea. So anyways, in terms of the speech itself, I don't know where it ranks in terms of best to worst, but it did have a very different feel to it, certainly than previous State of the Unions. Okay, and part of the reason is just that last year the economy performed a lot better. The labor market was better. We had the best year of jobs growth that we've had in about 15 years. And so he actually had quite a bit to brag about, and he certainly took that chance to do so. And so the speech was different. It was essentially him saying, I'm a lame duck president. I know the Republicans now have both houses of Congress, okay, and I've got some things that I can brag about. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to essentially say a little bit more what I want, what I feel, and the chips are going to fall where they may. But if I can close by saying, let's be honest, how many of these State of the Unions does anybody even remember, really? But in terms of where the speech ranks, who cares?
Well, on that note, we will bid you adieu and say thanks for your thoughts. We've certainly got what will invariably be a great political contest coming our way, and I'm sure we'll come back to the Garcia well soon enough.
Awesome.
This is good news, people.